Good morning. It's Wisdom Wednesdays. I am Ariana Newcomer, Dove Oracle Priestess, and the creator of the Wise Woman Immersion Group Program. And I also offer private mentoring, spiritual mentoring, and coaching, voice healing, and the new Codes of Heaven, Codes of Seven, Codes of Heaven, that's a good Freudian slip, Codes of Seven coherence practices, which are designed to help us create energetic coherence between all five intelligences that we carry as beings of both earth and spirit, human and divine. So today, I'm inspired to talk about the patriarchy inside me. I've been working with a voice client, and she has this story. She told me a story about a situation that she had had with a now former business partner, where she had thought that they were in a partnership, and this other person clearly had thought that she was just a contractor and ended up really reducing her rate of pay and doing other things that were not consistent with a true partnership. And this person is, of course, very self-aware and has really been working on herself for many years. And her first impetus after the outrage and the anger and the feeling of betrayal was to look inside and say, okay, where am I responsible? How have I co-created this? And she realized that she was carrying the patriarchy inside herself. And it really drove her to behave in ways that didn't truly serve her. And so she didn't get really clear with this person about, is this a partnership and exactly how is this functioning? And when this situation came up, she didn't, her first instinct was to take care of the other person instead of taking care of herself, and to start blaming herself instead of taking the actions that would have helped to clear the situation, helped her to stay true to herself, hold her own integrity, and claim her own voice and claim her wisdom. So it's a great illustration of the many ways, the many unconscious ways in which we carry this system within ourselves, and we tend to continue to perpetuate it because it is the air we breathe, it is the water we swim in. We're all in this culture. And if you've followed me for a while, you know I like to use Riane Eisler's terms of domination versus partnership instead of patriarchy and matriarchy, because I think they're more descriptive and they give us more opportunity for expanding our perspective in ways that are helpful and are going to help us move forward instead of demonizing one gender or the other potentially. But partnership is equal, that when men and women can be in true partnership with each other, then we have the real, true relationships. And yet we are in this dominator culture. We've been brought up in that. It's been the primary culture on the planet for about 5,000 years. And the dominators have mostly been men. And they've been dominating the other half of the human race, which is the female half. And we're in this time of a rebalancing, this time of a rise of the divine feminine, the return of the divine feminine. And Riane Eisler's work is some of the most wonderful to me that I've come across in terms of helping ourselves reorient and rebalance in these ways. And learn that our history, as we grew up learning it, is not necessarily correct. There were partnership cultures that existed who got written out of the historical record because the people writing the history were, of course, in the dominator culture, and that's what they saw when they were looking at these archaeological records. But a re-examination of these has shown that there were partnership cultures where men and women both held power, And that, sorry, having a brain freeze here. Oh, and I'm really dealing with allergies this morning, so please excuse me. So that there were these cultures that we're not doomed as humanity to have to be in a dominator cultural structure. So it's really helpful to look within and see, okay, where inside me am I still holding and perpetuating the dominator culture? And we can dominate ourselves as well, instead of treating ourselves with true partnership. And one of the ways we do that is by shutting down our voices, as this client had done, and found that she didn't really speak out and speak up for herself. And that there's a real resistance inside to even acknowledging the emotions that had come up around this issue, that anger, the sense of betrayal. And one of the things in the dominator culture is that we as women are really brought up to think about blaming ourselves first. And that's where she went with this. Now, it is really, really important for us to have personal responsibility. The only person we can change is us. And perspective is everything. However, we can go a little too far in the direction of, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for absolutely everything. And that doesn't actually give the other person their part in the issue too. If we're going to have true partnership, there have to be two people involved. Hi, Barbara. Thanks so much. And a true partnership is allowing each person to have their part in the issue, and to make sure that both those parts, both those people, are addressed in the conversation, because otherwise partnership doesn't happen. So being aware, as my client became aware, oh, I am really holding the patriarchy inside of me, and I am holding myself into those patterns, into that culture, by the way that I am behaving, by the way that I am holding my voice back, by the way that I am not acknowledging my own emotions, by the way that I am holding myself to speaking carefully and being nice, that was actually perpetuating the patriarchy within herself. So that way of dominating ourselves from within. So the more we become aware of these things, the more that we can now begin to shift. So it's really valuable. You may have heard me talk about voice stories in the past, and this is another aspect of how we carry that dominator culture within. And I think of a voice story as a story that causes us to develop habits of speech that are related to how our voice works and how we allow ourselves to express ourselves. And other stories relate to behavior also. So this one in this situation was a voice story for this client, that she found that she could not express what was truly going on for her because her internalized story or pattern was to blame herself, take it on herself, and take care of the other person first before herself. So this is one of the ways that we perpetuate patriarchy, the dominator culture. So it's just all in this context of becoming more aware and becoming more conscious. And when something is unconscious, it can just drive us without our realizing it. And of course, we have many, many things that operate in this way for us. And racial issues, gender issues, voice issues, behavioral issues. Our brains are wired to create unconscious habits so that we don't have to think consciously about everything we need to do. like learning to drive a car. When you first started learning to drive, remember how you had to look and see where everything was, and you were unsure. Your muscle movements were unsure, and if you were trying to learn how to drive a stick shift, you probably popped the clutch and caused yourself a little whiplash, or your driving instructor to get a little whiplash. I had that with my trying to teach my second son to drive a clutch. But once you learn to drive, those things become unconscious. And then we can carry on a conversation in the car, and we can sing along to a CD or the radio in the car. Our brain can be occupied partially with other things while we're driving, because those patterns, those neuromuscular patterns, have gone into the unconscious brain, and they're being operated from there, so that our conscious mind can be aware of other things and do other things. So this is a very useful trait and habit for us to have as humans, and yet it also can lead us into these difficulties with the unconscious habits that then become things that are not necessarily helpful or useful, like perpetuating the patriarchy from inside, because we're unconscious about the ways in which we do that. So consider for yourself, how many places, how many ways do I tend to perpetuate that dominator culture within myself? And this is really true for men and women. I work mostly with women, so a lot of the stories that I have come from women, and I am a woman, obviously. However, the dominator culture has damaged men as much as it has damaged women, just in different ways. Men have been taught in general to really hide their true emotional selves. Men might have been brought up, not so much nowadays, but boys don't cry. And so being unable to express their tender side, their sensitive side, without being shamed or bullied. And so a story that men might carry of the patriarchy inside is, I can't show weakness, or I won't look like a man. Or if I seem to be feminine in any way, then I am not enough of a man, and that's not okay. And sort of bonding with other men by complaining about women and the way women behave. Then, of course, there's a whole spectrum in this, in terms of your place on the sexuality spectrum, right? So it's very, very interesting. And this inner exploration is really valuable and really important for all of us to just keep doing. And the more we bring these things into our awareness, the more we can do something about them. We can shift the way that we behave so that we can create partnership, true partnership. And that's not just between men and women. It's also between parents and children. It's also between teachers and students. It's also between governments and people who vote for the governments. It's also between humanity and nature, which is crucial at this time. So releasing the inner patriarch, allowing the inner dominator to be only an aspect and to come more into our awareness, so that we can claim our voices, claim our wisdom, claim our value, and create the kind of world that we really want to live in. See you next time.